Shields are holding, Kara reported, her voice thick with disbelief. This thing's shield capacity is off the charts. Our weapons are barely making a dent. Drake clenched her fists, her mind already formulating a new strategy. If direct attacks wouldn't work, they'd have to outsmart this enemy. She had one option left, one gamble that could shift the balance in their favor. Deploy the Titan drones, she ordered. We'll distract them long enough to break their momentum. We need to find their weak point. The Titan drones were an advanced piece of technology developed by humanity's best engineers, small, agile, and equipped with EMP warheads designed to disable enemy systems. The drones zipped out of the Odyssey's bays, swarming the battlefield like a cloud of mechanical bees. Their mission was simple: cause chaos, disrupt the enemy's targeting systems, and create an opening. For a moment, it worked. The unknown ship seemed to falter, its weapons firing erratically as the drones swarmed around it. But then, the ship emitted a pulse, a shockwave of energy that rippled outward, disabling several drones in an instant. The remaining drones, though effective in their chaos, weren't enough to penetrate the enemy's defenses. Not good, Kara muttered, watching as the fleet's efforts seemed to have little effect. Their technology is beyond anything we've encountered. We need a new plan. Drake's mind was a whirlwind of calculations and strategies. She had never faced an enemy like this, and it was clear that brute force alone wouldn't win this battle. If humanity was going to survive, they would need to exploit this enemy's arrogance, just as they had done with the Vraxians. We're going to need to outwit them, she said, more to herself than to anyone else. Have we still got access to the Vraxian data on their technology? Lieutenant Kara quickly checked. Yes, Captain. It's all stored in the archives. We've been using it to counter their tactics. Drake nodded. Then it's time to put that data to good use. I want you to feed their signal back into the enemy's communication system. Use their own tech against them. Kara hesitated for only a moment before getting to work. It was a risky move, but if it worked, it could be the key to breaking the stalemate. As Kara typed furiously, Drake watched as the data from the Vraxian archives began to fill the screen. The Vraxians had a unique encryption system that, if exploited, could provide a backdoor into the enemy's systems. If the unknown warship was based on similar technology, this could give them the opening they needed. Ready to deploy the counter signal, Captain, Kara announced, her voice tense with anticipation. Do it, Drake ordered. With a press of a button, the Odyssey sent out a pulse, a frequency set to mirror the Vraxian encryption system. The signal rippled through space, reaching the unknown warship's systems. For a brief moment, the ship's defenses flickered, the massive shields wavering just long enough to expose a small vulnerability. Now, Drake shouted, not wasting a second. All ships, fire at that weak spot. The human fleet unleashed a final, coordinated barrage. Railguns, plasma torpedoes, and missiles all hit the exposed weak points simultaneously. The unknown warship's shields collapsed, and its massive hull shuddered under the impact. But even as the ship began to crack, it didn't fall. The unknown enemy ship fought back fiercely, activating an emergency weapon that fired a massive energy pulse directly at the human fleet. The pulse hit the Odyssey squarely, sending a shockwave that rattled the entire ship. "We've got damage," Kara yelled, her voice rising with panic. "Shields are down to 40%. We're taking heavy fire from all directions." Drake gritted her teeth, refusing to let fear overtake her. "Get us out of here, Kara." Full evasive maneuvers. Now, the Odyssey veered sharply to the left, narrowly dodging another massive pulse. The rest of the fleet followed suit, scattering in all directions to minimize the damage. But Drake could feel the time ticking away. They had to end this battle, or they would lose everything. "Prepare one last attack," she commanded. "All ships, this is our last chance. We go all in, or we don't go at all." As the ships regrouped and prepared for one final, all-out strike, Drake watched as the unknown warship's systems flickered once more. They had done it. They had found the weakness. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The final push was coming. It was a fight for humanity's survival, and Captain Drake would make sure they didn't go down without a fight. The crew worked quickly, adjusting the sensors, and a moment later, the screen filled with the silhouette of the unknown vessel. It was massive, too large to be any known ship within the galaxy. The shape was unfamiliar, but the energy readings were unmistakable. Whatever it was no ordinary warship. "We need to know what we're up against," Drake said, her voice colder than before. "Get me a tactical analysis." Now. Kara worked feverishly, her fingers flying over the controls. The seconds dragged on like hours. Then the answer came. "Captain, this is a new threat. It's unlike anything we've encountered before. It's massive, heavily armored, and based on the energy signature, it has weapons far more advanced than anything the Vraxians possess. If this is an ally of theirs, we are in serious trouble." Drake's jaw tightened. The first few rounds of this war had been brutal, but now the stakes were rising. A new player had entered the field, one who wasn't bound by the same rules of warfare that the humans had come to understand. "How much time do we have before it's in range?" Drake asked, her voice cutting through the tension. "About 20 minutes, Captain," Kara replied. "If it's hostile, it could be a game changer. We'll need to regroup or we risk losing our advantage." Drake's mind raced. The fleet was still recovering from the last engagement, but there was no time to waste. She had no intention of letting humanity's hard-earned victory slip through their fingers. She turned to her tactical officer. "Prepare the fleet for evasive maneuvers. I want every ship ready for battle. We might not have time to finish repairs, but we're going to give this new threat everything we've got." The hum of activity on the bridge heightened as the crew sprang into action. The fleet began to rearrange its position, forming a defensive perimeter around the Odyssey and preparing for what would likely be a decisive confrontation. The unknown warship was closing fast, and the clock was ticking down. As the human fleet moved into position, Captain Drake took one last look at the Vraxian wreckage behind them. This was not over. The universe had just become a far more dangerous place, but humanity had already proven one thing: they would fight to the bitter end. And no one, not even this new enemy, could say for sure what was coming next. The unknown warship continued to close the gap between itself and the human fleet, its massive silhouette growing larger with each passing second. Captain Drake's mind raced as she watched the tactical readouts flicker on her screen. The ship was too advanced, too powerful. This new threat could very well be the final test for humanity, and she had no intention of backing down. "Captain," Kara's voice broke through the tension. "The enemy vessel is now within range. It's emitting a strange signal, one we haven't encountered before." Drake's eyes flicked to the comms officer, who was quickly attempting to decipher the code. She had no illusions about what this might be. The Vraxians had been brutal, but this was something else entirely. "Can we counter it?" Drake asked, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing within her. "I don't think so, Captain. It's not just a jamming signal. It's altering our frequencies, messing with our navigation systems." A chill ran down Drake's spine. This wasn't just an attack. This was an attempt to subdue the fleet, to break their resolve before the first shot was even fired. It was a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. "Take evasive action, now," Drake barked. "All ships, disperse. I want to make it impossible for them to lock onto us." The fleet's movements were immediate, but the unknown ship was fast, faster than anything the humans had ever encountered. Its weapon systems were already charging, and every second counted. Drake's mind raced with possibilities. Who were they? Were they the Vraxian allies, or was this a completely new threat, a force from another part of the galaxy, one who had decided to stake a claim in the conflict? The answer didn't matter. Humanity's survival depended on one thing. They had to fight, and they had to fight hard. "Prepare for counterattack," Drake ordered, her voice firm. "We've taken down the Vraxian fleet once. We can do it again. All ships, open fire on that vessel with everything we've got." A barrage of missiles, plasma rounds, and railgun fire erupted from the human fleet, lighting up the darkness of space. The Odyssey fired first, unleashing a powerful salvo of plasma torpedoes toward the unknown warship. The other ships followed suit, their weapons flashing as they filled the void with deadly energy. But the unknown ship barely flinched. Its shields, a deep purple hue, absorbed the barrage without even flickering. "Direct hit to their engines, Captain," Kara announced, her voice barely containing the excitement. "They're going dark. Their flagship is down." Drake didn't smile, didn't celebrate. Not yet. The battle was still ongoing, and the Vraxians were still alive. Their pride had been crushed, but they were cornered now. Like a wounded animal, they were about to strike back even harder. "Prepare for a final assault," Drake commanded. "We finish this now, before they can regroup." Humanity's fleet wasn't going to stop until the Vraxians were completely out of the fight. They had shown the universe that they were not to be underestimated, that they would not go down without a fight. The Vraxians had thought they could trap humanity, destroy them. But in the end, it was the Vraxians who had been trapped in their own snare. The final push began as human forces surged forward. They would not rest until the Vraxian threat was obliterated from the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, humanity stood unshaken, their flag proudly waving in the cosmic winds. The Vraxian fleet was done. The humans had won. But this battle was just one chapter in a war that was far from over. As the remnants of the Vraxian fleet scattered, the human forces did not lower their guard. The victory was a significant blow to the Vraxians, but Drake and her crew knew better than to celebrate too soon. The vastness of space was unforgiving, and the Vraxians, though wounded, were still dangerous. This battle was only a part of a much larger war, a war that would define the future of the galaxy. Drake stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, her eyes scanning the viewscreen. The Vraxian flagship was a twisted wreck, its once proud hull now a mass of fire and debris drifting into the void. The remaining enemy ships had either retreated or were now drifting helplessly, their weapons useless against the precision strikes of the human fleet. Despite the victory, there was a lingering unease in the air. "We've won this round, but don't get comfortable," Drake muttered under her breath. "There's more coming." Her words were not just a prediction. They were a warning. The Vraxians were known for their resilience, and their pride was a dangerous thing. The humans had proven that they could strike back, that they could turn the tables when cornered. But the Vraxians would learn from this loss, adapt, and come at them with even more deadly force. Drake knew this wasn't the end of the war. It was merely a new beginning. Lieutenant Kara turned to her, her face set with determination. "Captain, the fleet is requesting your orders. Should we pursue the Vraxians further?" Drake took a deep breath. The logical move would be to push forward, to chase down the retreating fleet and eliminate the threat once and for all. But there was something in the back of her mind urging caution. The Vraxians might be down, but they were never out, not until their last ship was destroyed. "No," Drake said firmly. "We're not going after them. Not yet. They'll regroup, but we need to take the time to assess our fleet, get repairs underway, and re-establish our formations. We'll need every ship at full capacity if this war is going to continue." Kara nodded. "Understood, Captain." As the crew worked swiftly to make the necessary repairs and maintain their battle readiness, Drake sat in her command chair, her mind racing. The victory had been hard-earned, but it had come at a cost. The fleet had taken damage, and lives had been lost. Every mission, every battle, chipped away at the strength of humanity's forces. The Vraxians, however, were still formidable. They had underestimated humanity once, but next time, they wouldn't make the same mistake. The brief respite was interrupted by a sudden alert. The fleet's sensor systems had detected a new anomaly, an enormous energy signature, unlike anything they had encountered before, appearing just beyond the edge of the system. Drake's heart skipped a beat. What is it? Reading is inconsistent, Kara reported. It's not one of our ships, nor is it anything we've seen from the Vraxians. Drake's instincts flared. Could this be another enemy, a new force joining the war? Or had the Vraxians called in reinforcements from elsewhere in the galaxy? No matter the origin, they couldn't afford to be caught off guard. The Vraxians had already shown their ruthlessness. If they were now seeking outside help, humanity's position could be in even greater danger. Can we get a clear image? Drake asked. As the remnants of the Vraxian fleet staggered in space, Captain Drake could feel the weight of the moment, but she refused to let her guard down. The battle was far from won. Even with their flagship crippled, the Vraxians were still a formidable foe. They were regrouping, adapting, and preparing for the inevitable counterattack. Damage report. Drake barked, her voice cutting through the tense silence on the bridge. Minimal losses, Captain, Lieutenant Kara replied quickly, her eyes scanning the screens. The shields are holding, but we've taken some hull damage in sectors 5 and 6. We'll need repairs, but we're still combat ready. Drake nodded. Good, keep the pressure on. I want full scans of their fleet, all frequencies. Let's make sure they don't have any more surprises for us. The crew quickly returned to work, knowing that every second counted. As the human ships regrouped and moved into their next formation, the Vraxian fleet remained silent for a few moments. They were clearly reorganizing, trying to plan their next move after the unexpected failure of their initial assault. But then the silence shattered. A massive, ominous ripple spread through the space around the human fleet. The Vraxians were preparing for something big, something they hadn't unleashed yet. Drake could feel the air grow tense. She had seen this tactic before. It was a final push, a desperate act to regain control of the battle. And it was often the most dangerous. Incoming. Kara's voice was calm, but with an edge. Their remaining ships are closing in fast. We got about 30 seconds before they're in range. Looks like they're deploying something new. Huge energy signature. Drake's mind raced. They were desperate, but if the Vraxians had a secret weapon up their sleeves, it was now or never. They had to take control. She wasn't about to let her crew go down fighting blindly. Humanity wasn't a victim anymore. They were a force to be reckoned with. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, all ships. I want full shields, and get those fighters launched. Now, Drake ordered. The Odyssey and the rest of the fleet sprang into action. Fighters rocketed out of their docking bays, diving into the chaos, weaving through the barrage of enemy fire as they rushed toward the Vraxian formation. Meanwhile, the human ships took evasive positions, dodging the incoming missiles that the Vraxians were hurling at them. But then, as the Vraxian fleet moved forward, the ground shook, and space itself seemed to distort. A massive beam of blue energy shot from one of the Vraxian ships, lighting up the dark expanse like a miniature star. The blast was aimed directly at the Odyssey, and in its path, it seemed unstoppable, a spear of death headed straight for the heart of humanity's resistance. The entire bridge was silent for a heartbeat, the tension in the air palpable. Brace for impact. Drake shouted, her voice a mixture of command and urgency. But the blast didn't hit. A sudden, blinding flash erupted from the front of the Odyssey, as a massive counterblast of energy erupted from their own engines, creating a temporary shockwave. The two energy beams collided in space, the force of the impact shaking the hull of the Odyssey, but creating an enormous explosion that temporarily obscured the entire battlefield. "We're still here," Kara exclaimed in disbelief. The crew couldn't believe their eyes. Against all odds, the blast had been deflected, just in time. Humanity had managed to turn the tables once again. But this wasn't over. The Vraxians, though stunned, weren't defeated yet. The blast's aftermath created a momentary gap in the battlefield, and Drake wasn't going to waste it. All ships concentrate fire on their flagship. Full barrage. Now, she ordered. The Odyssey and the rest of the fleet opened fire with everything they had. Missiles, plasma rounds, railguns. Every weapon in their arsenal was unleashed at the Vraxian flagship. The Vraxian flagship, still reeling from the energy clash, tried to raise its shields, but it was too late. The human weapons were overwhelming. The massive ship buckled under the assault, the shields flickering and then collapsing under the concentrated fire. Several sections of the Vraxian flagship began to disintegrate, with huge explosions erupting from its hull. The Vraxian fleet's confidence shattered, as the once mighty vessel began to break apart in slow motion. Lieutenant Kara worked alongside Drake, managing the tactical communications. "We've got a breach in Sector 9. The Vraxians are flanking us." Kara's voice was tight, betraying the urgency of the situation. Drake didn't need to be told. She could see the pattern developing. The Vraxians were trying to divide and conquer, using their advanced tactics to wear down the human defenses. "Move the fleet into a defensive wedge," Drake commanded. "We'll form a protective barrier around our weakest ships. I want that breach closed off before they get any closer." With a flick of her wrist, Kara relayed the order. The human fleet immediately adjusted their formation, bringing the larger ships into the center, while smaller, more agile ones formed an outer perimeter. The Vraxians were relentless, though. Their ships bombarded the perimeter, trying to break through, but the humans were holding steady. Their shields held firm, absorbing the hits as the ships moved in perfect coordination. Meanwhile, on the Odyssey, Drake's mind worked overtime. She saw the patterns, the same ones she had learned from years of experience. The Vraxians were powerful, yes, but they were also arrogant. They believed that their superior technology and tactics could guarantee victory. But humanity had something they didn't, the element of unpredictability. And Drake intended to use it to her advantage. "Prepare a surprise assault," she muttered to herself. "Give them a taste of their own medicine." Drake tapped the console, sending a hidden signal to the Odyssey's other ships. She had a plan, one that involved luring the Vraxians into a trap of their own making. They had underestimated the humans, and now it was time to flip the script. "All ships, I want you to draw them in. Use your remaining energy to bait them into position. We're going to hit them with everything we've got." Kara raised an eyebrow, momentarily confused. "Are you sure about this, Captain? We're still outnumbered. This is risky." "I know," Drake replied, her voice steady. "But it's our only shot. If we don't take this chance, we're dead anyway." Without another word, Kara gave the order. The human fleet began a slow retreat, seemingly struggling to maintain its formation. The Vraxians, sensing victory was near, pushed forward, eager to close the gap and finish off the human fleet. As they got closer, Drake's heart raced. The Vraxians were too confident. They were falling right into the trap. "Now," Drake shouted. In an instant, the human ships turned, launching everything they had left. Missiles, energy blasts, and railgun projectiles rained down on the Vraxians, striking with precision. It was a devastating blow, and the Vraxians had no time to react. Their shields, already weakened by the ongoing battle, were now useless against the onslaught. Explosions rocked their ships, tearing them apart in blinding flashes. The flagship, once so formidable, was now burning in the cold void of space. "We've got them," Kara exclaimed. But even as the human fleet celebrated their momentary victory, Captain Drake knew the war wasn't over. The Vraxians, though damaged, were not yet defeated. They would regroup, rethink their strategies, and come back with even more deadly force. Drake knew that this was just the beginning of something much larger. The Vraxians had made one fatal mistake, one they wouldn't make again. "Stay vigilant," Drake warned. "They're not done. Neither are we." The fight for survival was far from over, and as long as humanity still had the will to fight, the galaxy would learn that they would never be easy prey. The Vraxians may have thought they were hunting humans, but in reality they were the ones who had walked straight into the hunter's trap. The game had changed, and humanity was now on the offensive. The Vraxians had made their move, but it was humanity's turn to show them just how deadly they could be. Shield strength is holding, Lieutenant Kara reported, glancing at the status readouts on her console. But if they keep this up, we won't last long. We'll make it last, Drake replied, her voice filled with resolve. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Get us close to their lead ship. I want that flagship disabled now. As the Odyssey surged forward, narrowly avoiding enemy fire, the human fleet followed in lockstep, moving like a well-oiled machine. The Vraxian flagship loomed ahead, a massive vessel with weaponry that could obliterate entire fleets in one strike. It was clear that the aliens believed their firepower would win the day. But Captain Drake wasn't so easily intimidated. Target their weapons arrays, she ordered. Take out their cannons first. Then we'll hit their engines. The Odyssey unleashed a barrage of concentrated fire, striking the Vraxian flagship with precision. The enemy ship's shields crackled as they absorbed the attack, but the hits were enough to cause damage. The Vraxians retaliated with an explosion of their own, but the human ships had already adapted, anticipating the strike and weaving between incoming fire. It was a deadly dance, each side trying to outmaneuver the other, but the humans were relentless. Drake's heart pounded as she saw the first crack in the Vraxian armor. Their shields faltered, their weapons array beginning to break down under the pressure of the human assault. The flagship was still formidable, but it was no longer invincible. The humans were making progress. Captain, the flagship's shields are down to 40%. Kara called out, a glimmer of hope in her voice. Drake's grip tightened on the armrest of her chair. This was their moment. All ships, concentrate fire on their main weaponry. We need to disable them before they can regroup. The human fleet surged forward again, unleashing everything they had. The Vraxian flagship fired back with fury, but the humans were too fast, too clever. One by one, their weapon systems began to fail, their firepower diminishing. The Vraxians' plans were beginning to unravel. The battle was far from over, but the momentum had shifted. Captain Drake knew they had gained the upper hand, but only just. The Vraxian forces were still strong, and the fight was far from won. But for the first time since the ambush began, Drake allowed herself a small smile. The Vraxians had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to fight when cornered. The aliens had thought this trap would be the end of humanity, but instead, it had awakened something far more dangerous, a force determined to survive at all costs. The Odyssey and its fleet pressed on, their guns blazing. Humanity had been pushed into a corner, but now it was time for the aliens to realize they had just made their biggest mistake. The tide of battle was shifting in humanity's favor, but the Vraxians weren't about to back down without a fight. As the human fleet continued to target their flagship, the Vraxians launched a new wave of countermeasures. Dozens of small, nimble attack craft were deployed, swarming like angry hornets, aiming to tear apart the human ships that had grown too close. The drones buzzed around with terrifying speed, and their laser fire erupted in bursts, trying to punch through the human fleet's defenses. It was a desperate, last-ditch effort to maintain control over the situation, and it wasn't going to be easy for Captain Drake and her crew. Despite the chaos, Drake remained calm, her sharp mind focused on the battlefield. The enemy ships were closing in, trying to box in the human fleet from all sides. The pirates, although mostly wiped out, still lingered on the fringes, attempting to regroup and re-engage. There was no time for hesitation. If the humans faltered now, the Vraxians would gain back the initiative. But Captain Drake wasn't about to let that happen. Deploy the fighter squadron. Target those drones, she ordered. The Odyssey shuddered as her fighters were launched into the fray, each one darting out into the chaos like birds of prey, seeking out the small Vraxian attack ships. The battle in space was like a dance of destruction, ships swooping and dodging, exploding in brilliant flashes, while the human pilots expertly outmaneuvered their alien counterparts. As the fleet drew closer to the colony, The Vraxian ships hailed the Odyssey with an offer of peace. "Human ship," came the Vraxian commander's voice over the comms. "We come in peace. We are here to assist you. Your people have suffered enough. Allow us to help." Drake paused, considering the message carefully. The Vraxian's offer sounded sincere, but something didn't sit right. Her gut told her that this wasn't a rescue mission. It was a trap. "I don't trust them," Drake said flatly. "We're not going in unarmed." But before she could order the next course of action, the situation took an unexpected turn. The pirate ships, who had been hiding in the shadows, suddenly launched an attack on the human colony. Explosions lit up the surface of the planet, and the human defenders scrambled to react. It was the chaos that the Vraxians had been waiting for. The humans were caught between the pirates and the Vraxian fleet, and they were outnumbered. The odds seemed impossible, but Captain Drake would not back down. Her fleet was trained for these types of situations. They had learned from the past, and they would fight back with everything they had. "What are we going to do, Captain?" Kara asked, her eyes wide with concern. "We fight back," Captain Drake said with a fierce determination in her voice, "and we make sure the Vraxians regret ever thinking they could fool us." Little did they know, the trap had already been sprung, and the real battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The aliens had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity's resilience. The moment they thought they had set the perfect trap, they had unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that would change the galaxy forever. The Odyssey powered its engines, ready to face the unknown. Captain Drake knew this would be a test unlike any other. The trap was set, but humanity would not be easy prey. Captain Drake's instincts were always sharp, but even she was caught off guard by the sudden explosion that rocked the colony's surface. The pirate ships, once hiding in the shadows, had emerged from their cover with ruthless precision. The blasts tore into the colony's defenses, sending plumes of smoke and fire into the sky. The once peaceful mission had turned into a nightmare in the blink of an eye. The Vraxian fleet, which had appeared so peaceful just moments ago, now stood poised to strike. Drake knew that they had been part of the plan all along, but the scale of the attack was something she hadn't expected. The pirates' assault was just the beginning, a mere distraction to create chaos while the Vraxians closed in for the kill. Drake's mind raced as she quickly assessed the situation. The Vraxian ships were strategically positioned to trap the humans between the pirates and their own superior forces. She could already see several of her ships taking fire from both sides, their shields flickering as they struggled to hold up against the onslaught. But there was one thing the Vraxians hadn't counted on: humanity's unyielding ability to adapt. Captain Drake's fleet wasn't just any fleet. It was a well-trained, battle-hardened group of warriors. They had faced impossible odds before, and they knew how to survive. "We've been set up," Lieutenant Kara said, her voice tight with anger. She was staring at the Vraxian fleet, watching as the enemy ships moved closer, their weapons primed. "What now, Captain?" Drake didn't hesitate. "We fight, but we do it smart. Take out the pirates first, then we'll deal with the Vraxians." Her fingers flew over the command console, issuing orders to her fleet. "Weapons online. All ships, focus fire on the pirate fleet's lead ship. Disable their engines and shields first." The battle was chaos. The human ships quickly formed a defensive perimeter, firing their weapons at the pirate ships with deadly accuracy. Each ship that went down created a chain reaction, explosions lighting up the darkness of space. But even as the pirates were being forced into retreat, Drake's eyes never left the Vraxian ships. They weren't sitting idle, waiting for their moment. They were closing in, positioning themselves like a noose tightening around its prey. The Vraxians hadn't expected the humans to turn the tide so quickly. As the last pirate ship was taken out, their fleet began to make its move. The Vraxians deployed drones, small, agile craft that could swarm around the human ships, targeting weak points and attempting to disable their engines. They also launched missile strikes, calculated to overwhelm the humans' defenses. But the human ships had already adjusted, quickly adapting their shields to the new threats. The Vraxians were good, but humanity had one advantage they didn't expect: the ability to learn and adjust on the fly. The galaxy was a vast expanse of stars, planets, and unknown dangers. Among its many wonders, one thing was becoming clear to those who watched from the shadows. Humanity was growing stronger. Their ships were faster, their weapons more advanced, and their colonies were spreading across the stars. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy's most powerful empires were starting to feel threatened. The alien species known as the Vraxians had been watching humanity closely. They had observed the rapid expansion of the human race and their military might. For years, they had debated how best to deal with this new, unpredictable force. After much deliberation, they came to a chilling conclusion: humanity must be eliminated before they could become a threat to the entire galaxy. But the Vraxians weren't stupid. They knew that to defeat humanity, they would need a plan, something clever. A direct assault would be too risky. So they devised a trap, one that they believed would lure humanity into their hands without any possibility of escape. It was foolproof. The Vraxians had spies among the lesser races of the galaxy. They knew of a remote human colony that had recently sent out a distress signal. The colony was under attack from space pirates, and their situation was dire. The Vraxians saw an opportunity. They would pose as rescuers, offering aid to the beleaguered colony, and then spring their trap once the humans had lowered their guard. A fleet of Vraxian ships was dispatched, their hulls sleek and dark, their weapons hidden beneath layers of camouflage. They were designed to appear as nothing more than a peacekeeping force, their ships armed with only the most basic of weaponry. The humans, they believed, would see this as an opportunity to secure their survival. The Vraxians sent a message, claiming that they had come to protect the colony and restore order. Their fleet entered the nearby sector, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all channels. The humans, desperate for help, quickly responded. They saw the Vraxians as a savior, someone who could finally turn the tide against the pirates who had been terrorizing their people for weeks. But little did they know, the pirates were part of the Vraxian plan. The Vraxians had secretly paid them off, knowing that they would be able to create just enough chaos to draw humanity into their trap. When the Vraxian fleet arrived at the colony's location, they appeared to be exactly what they had promised: a force sent to protect and restore order. On the human side, Captain Eleanor Drake, leader of the colony's defense fleet, stood at the helm of her flagship, the Odyssey. She was known across the human colonies for her sharp mind and quick decisions. The distress signal had reached her only hours earlier, and she had already begun to organize a fleet for a rescue mission. Her crew was well trained, and they were used to danger. They had faced pirates, rebels, and even rogue alien factions before. But this time felt different. Drake reviewed the data on her screen as her ship cut through the cold, dark void of space. The Vraxian fleet was moving toward the colony at full speed, but their intentions were still unclear. From everything she had read in the report, they seemed like a legitimate rescue mission, but something felt off. Drake trusted her instincts more than anything else, and they were telling her to be cautious. "We need to approach this carefully," Captain Drake muttered to herself as she adjusted the course of the Odyssey. Her fingers hovered over the command panel, but she was not yet ready to make her move. Her first officer, Lieutenant Kara, stood nearby, watching the Vraxian fleet on her own screen. "Are we sure they're not what they say they are, Captain?" she asked, her voice calm but concerned. "I don't know," Drake replied, squinting at the Vraxian ships on her display. "But I've seen enough strange things to know that nothing is ever as it seems in this galaxy. Keep our shields up and weapons hot, just in case." For a moment, the crew was silent, knowing that Drake's instincts were rarely wrong. The Vraxians were not the first to attempt trickery, and they would not be the last. Yet this felt different. There was an ominous weight to the situation that Drake couldn't quite put into words.